This video provides an overview of the GTAPAgg software and demonstrates how it can be used to aggregate different GTAP databases. I'll start by providing a brief overview of GTAPAgg, and then transition to a demonstration showing you how to load a GTAP database package and choose your source data. For example, the standard GTAP database or a particular satellite database, as well as reference year. We'll then cover how to aggregate a GTAP database using an aggregation scheme. And finally, we'll look at how users can modify an existing aggregation scheme using GTAPAgg or an aggregation mapping file. GTAPAgg is a program used to create aggregated databases for GTAP's suite of economic models. The software was developed and is maintained by Mark Horridge from the Centre of Policy Studies in Australia. As new features are added to the software, you may hear it referred to as GTAPAgg 2, 3, etc. But for the purposes of this presentation, we'll use GTAPAgg as a catch-all name for the software, regardless of the specific version. Since nearly all applications of a GTAP model use an aggregated database, users don't typically utilize the full dimensionality when running policy simulations, which is why GTAPAgg is widely used in the economic modeling community. The GTAPAgg software requires a license file, which is provided by the Center for Global Trade Analysis. This file has an LIC extension and must be placed in the same directory on your computer where the software was installed. GTAPAgg licenses are version-specific and can be used for the standard GTAP database as well as all satellite databases specific to that version. With a license, users can create multiple aggregated databases with any number of regions or sectors. Now that we've covered a basic overview of GTAPAgg, let's get ready to move on to our demonstration. After launching the GTAPAgg software, you'll notice there are 8 clickable categories from which to choose. The first, Instructions and Help, provides general directions and help with the software. The second, Choose Source Data, allows users to choose different GTAP database versions and reference years. The third, Read Aggregation Scheme from File, allows users to read in a previously prepared aggregation scheme. The next 3 categories facilitate changes to regional, sectoral, and factor endowments, while the second to last category allows you to save your aggregation scheme to file. The final category creates aggregated database results in GTAPAgg, using your own aggregation scheme to prepare corresponding GTAP data files. Now that we've reviewed the base commands in GTAPAgg, let's move away from our slides and transition into our demonstration of the GTAPAgg software. We'll start this demonstration by first covering where you can find information about the GTAP database. On the GTAP website, let's navigate to the Databases menu and click on GTAP Database, which will take us to a page that contains links to all of the database releases. To start, let's click on version 11, where we find information on sectoral and geographical coverage, as well as links to the documentation. If you'd like to find similar information about the different releases, simply click the link to that version on the main release page for more information. Now let's take a look at what's available for free. If you click the Archives link, you'll be taken to a page that lists the versions that are freely available. The Center for Global Trade Analysis makes releases that are 2 versions and older freely available to the public. For example, if the current release being sold is GTAP 11, then version 9 and older are freely available, and when GTAP 12 gets released, version 10 will become available. The same goes for satellite data sets, and if we scroll down on the Archives page, we'll find those files listed by version that are free to the public. Now that we've explored where to find information about the GTAP database and its different releases, let's get ready for the GTAPagg demonstration. Let's start by downloading the GTAPagg program. For this demonstration, since we're already on the archives page, we'll download the program from there using version 9. But depending on where you're launching this video from, for example a GTAPU course, or from behind the restricted paywall for database purchasers, you may be instructed to download GTAPagg, the installation instructions, your GTAPagg license file, and the data package files from a different location. Please be sure to follow the instructions provided based on your specific situation. And if you have questions on how or where you should access these files, please email contact@gtap@purdue.edu. To get started, I'm going to download the GTAPagg program. Note that if you weren't already logged into the GTAP website, you'll be prompted to do so before the download will begin. For ease of this demonstration, I'm going to download and save everything to my desktop, but you can save the files to your preferred location. We'll also download the GTAPagg instructions, which detail installation and setup, the zipped GTAPagg license file, and as mentioned before, for the sake of this demonstration, the all years data package file for version 9 of the database, which includes data for the years 2004, 2007, and 2011. We'll also scroll down to the GTAP 9 satellite data and utilities and download the all years package for the GTAP Power database. Note that depending on the version, the data package files may download directly as PKG files, or they may be zipped. If they're zipped, you'll need to extract the PKG file in order to load it into GTAPagg in a later step. Now that we've downloaded the necessary files, open the zipped GTAPagg file and double-click setup.exe to launch the installer. If prompted about allowing the application to make changes to your device, click Yes. Then click the Install button on the wizard, and click OK on the information window that states the installation was complete. Next, double-click to open the zipped license file we downloaded. As a reminder, for the sake of this demonstration, the zipped file we are starting with is for version 9 and is named GTAPAgg_v9. Depending on your situation, the zipped file may be named differently, but will contain a file named gtapagg.lic, which we need to drag to our desktop. When you launch GTAPagg for the first time, you'll be prompted that a license was not found. Click OK. OK again on the next prompt, and then navigate to the desktop where we saved the license file. Select that file and click Open. Alternatively, you could manually place the license file in the directory where GTAPagg was installed. If you fail to do one of these steps though, GTAPagg won't open since a license file is required. As mentioned, in this demonstration we're using the GTAP 9 database, so the license file is specific to that version. You should use the license file provided by the Center for Global Trade Analysis. License files are always named gtapagg.lic and contain details specific to the version of database you will be using. Now that we've linked our license file to GTAPagg, we're prompted that valid source data cannot be located. This is because we haven't yet loaded any data into the program. Click OK to continue. As you can see, all of the buttons on the main GTAPagg screen are inactive because there's no data present. You'll also notice that GTAPagg lists the details that are embedded in the license file you connected. Since we're using the free version 9 files right now, the license information is generic since it's freely available to all. If you're using a different version and license, the information listed will be different. Before we dive into working with GTAPAgg, let's first explore the Instructions and Help menu, where you'll find everything you need to know about the program. For instance, on the Contents tab, if we expand the Introduction section, we can click on any of the topics listed to learn more. If you wanted to learn more about change mapping, click that topic, and developers have included information to help users on that subject. Similarly, developers also provide a very useful section on error handling. So, if you ran into an issue where you had too many regions or sectors, you could click on that topic within the Errors and Problems section to learn more. Alternatively, if you wanted to search by a specific keyword, you could click the Search tab and enter a keyword to search by. Let's say we want to find more information on aggregations. We can enter that keyword into the search. Click List Topics, and be provided a list of results that match our search entry that we can double-click through to find what we're looking for. We encourage you to spend some time exploring the Help menu to further familiarize yourself with the program. Let's go ahead and close out of the Help menu and move on to the next phase of the demonstration, where we'll learn how to load data into GTAPAgg. As previously mentioned, depending on the version of GTAPAgg data package files you're working with, you may have directly downloaded the PKG files, or they may have been zipped. If they were zipped, and you haven't done so already, you'll need to extract the PKG files in order to load them into GTAPAgg. In the top left corner, click Package and select Install. Navigate to where you saved and/or extracted your package files to, which for me was on my desktop. The first package I'll load is the GTAP 9A database for all reference years, so I'm going to select that file and click Open. Once GTAPAgg has unpacked the data file into its directory, you'll be prompted of the successful install and can click OK. Back on the main screen of GTAPAgg, you'll now see that the previously disabled buttons are now active since a package has been loaded, and a new set of information has appeared on the right panel, which lists a summary of the mapping of regions, sectors, and factors, as well as the data package release information. The GTAPAgg software is built to serve as a shell to house multiple data packages so that users can easily toggle between inputs, including multiple database versions and reference years. We'll start by exploring the package we just loaded, and build to loading additional packages and toggling between them. To start, we need to specify the dataset we want to use, so we'll click on the Choose Source Data button. The window that opens allows you to specify which release or version of the database you want to use, the product or database type, and data reference year. Since we currently only have one data package loaded, we only have one option under Release and Product. But since that package contained multiple reference years, you'll see that we have 3 data years available to choose from: 2004, 2007, and 2011. As we install more packages, the options under Release, Product, and Data Year will expand. With an increasing number of GTAP versions, each with their own reference years and satellite datasets, you'll find this feature to be very useful. Let's go ahead and select 2011 as our data year and click OK. Now let's repeat the same steps to load a few other packages. Click Package, select Install, navigate to the desktop, which is where I saved the GTAP 9 Power Data Package file. Select it, Click Open, and then OK once the data has loaded, so that we have a few additional packages available to load. I've already downloaded the standard and GTAPE versions of the GTAP 11b database for all reference years. Note that at the time of producing this video, version 11 was not freely available, so the files I downloaded and will load into GTAPAgg were only available to those that purchased GTAP 11. We're using a different version to show how loading multiple releases within GTAPAgg will look. Let's go ahead and finish repeating our steps to load both of these additional package files. Now that we have multiple data packages loaded, let's click on the Choose Source Data button again to see the different options that are now available. You can see that there are 3 options now listed under GTAP releases. If you select GTAP 9, the available product is GTAP Power. If we'd also downloaded the GTAPE database for version 9, that option would have been listed under the product category as well. If we select GTAP 11b, there are 2 products listed, the standard and GTAPE database, both of which have 5 reference years available. If we toggle between GTAP and GTAPE, you'll notice that the text area below changes to provide information specific to that product. For example, if you scroll through the notes for GTAPE, users are informed that this database requires sector-specific naming conventions that must be used in order for the aggregated GTAPE data to work with that model. There are several differences across database releases in terms of sectoral and regional coverage. Most importantly, note that in previous data releases, the data format was compatible with the GTAP model, version 6.2 nomenclature and naming conventions. The version 6.2 model is what we refer to as the classic GTAP model. In 2017, the GTAP model underwent a facelift, and the GTAP version 7 model was developed with new nomenclature and naming conventions. The version 7 model is what we now call the standard GTAP model. As such, GTAP database releases are also updated to match the new naming conventions. For example, if you use the GTAP 9 database, the front data created by GTAPAgg will be consistent with the classic model, version 6.2. GTAPAgg, however, will also provide a zip archive that contains your aggregation scheme and naming conventions that's consistent with the version 7 model. Starting with GTAP 11, the front data is consistent with the V7 model, and GTAPAgg provides a backward data conversion for compatibility with the classic or version 6.2 model. We'll talk about this in more detail later in the demonstration. For now, let's select GTAP 11b as the release, GTAP as the product, 2017 as our data year, and then click OK. Since we just switched from version 9 to version 11 of the database, you'll also need to be sure you're using the license file provided specifically for that version. You'll recall we specified where to find the license file at the beginning of the demonstration when we installed GTAPAgg. That step in the installation process placed the license file in the root of the directory where GTAPAgg was installed. The license that's currently in that directory for this demonstration is for version 9, so I now need to replace that with the license for version 11. Again, if you have any questions on what license you should be using or where to download it from, please email contact@gtap@purdue.edu. Now that we have the correct license file in place, we're ready to explore the aggregation scheme. Now that we've selected the data we want to work with, let's click the Read Aggregation Scheme from File button. We need to make sure we're under the GTAPAgg 2, GTAP 11b, GTAP directory, since we're working with the standard GTAP database, and double-click the 2017 folder, since we selected that as our data year. All data distributions come with a default aggregation preloaded. Select the default.agg file and click Open. Note that the .agg extension refers to an aggregation file. Now that we've written our aggregation file, let's click on the View Change Regional Aggregation button, which opens a new window that shows the mapping associated with the aggregation file. The table on the top right includes all of the old regions and drop-down lists for mapping. The table at the bottom provides a list of the new regions and how they are individually mapped. The top left area of this window provides instructions on how to change the mapping and also displays a summary of the current aggregation. For example, the current aggregation in the GTAP 11 database with the 2017 reference year has 160 old regions mapped to 10 new ones. This information will be updated as we change the mapping. Let's say that we want to disaggregate a region from West Europe. To do this, in the table at the bottom, scroll down and locate the West Europe region. Right-click on that row and select Insert After, which will create a new row immediately after West Europe, where we can specify our new region. In the first cell of this new row, let's enter UK for the region code and United Kingdom for the description in the last cell. Now go to the table at the top right and scroll down to locate old region 83 GBR. The middle column is where the new region is specified, so we need to click the drop-down and select UK, and you'll see that the new region has been created. By doing so, the current aggregation has also been updated from 10 new regions to 11. We can now click OK to exit this window. Now that we've changed our regional aggregation, let's look at how to similarly change a sectoral aggregation by clicking on the View Changed Sectoral Aggregation button. This opens a window similar to what we just saw on the regional side, but allows us to inspect and change the current sectoral aggregation scheme. In the GTAP 11 database, the default aggregation maps 65 old sectors into 10 new ones. Let's say we want to call out coal, oil, and gas from the current extraction sector. In the bottom table, locate extraction, which is in row 3. Right-click in this row and select Insert After to create a new row where we can specify our new sector. Let's give this new sector a code for coal, oil, and gas, and enter coal, oil, and gas mining for the description. Since we're disaggregating coal, oil, and gas mining from the extraction sector, let's rename that sector's description to Other Mining and Extraction for further clarity. Now we need to go to the top table and update our old sector aggregation mapping by locating the sectors for coal, oil, and gas in rows 15 through 17, and changing their mapped sector in the second column from extraction to our new sector that we called coal, oil, gas. You'll notice that by mapping these 3 sectors to our new sector, the red warning in our new row in the bottom table went away, and now shows what sectors we mapped. And the current aggregation details at the top left have also updated to list 11 new sectors. Now that we've finished making our sectoral changes, let's click OK. Now let's take a look at the factor aggregation by clicking on the View Change Factor Aggregation button. Similar to the other windows, you can change the factor aggregation in these tables. In GTAP 11, we have 8 old factors mapped to 5 new ones. This time, instead of disaggregating, let's explore how to aggregate. And we'll aggregate unskilled and skilled labor into one composite factor, simply called labor. To do this, right-click on Row 1, select Insert After, and name the new factor labor. Note that on this table, you'll also need to identify whether the new factor is mobile, sluggish, or sector-specific. For example, land is sluggish in the standard GTAP model. Here, we need to define the transformation elasticity value, E-tray-E. Labor and capital are mobile, so we don't need to specify the exact elasticity. We just need to state that they're mobile. Natural resources are sector-specific or fixed, and we indicate the elasticity value here. Let's declare the new labor factor as mobile. Now, we need to select the correct mapping in the top table. All of the factors that were previously mapped to unskilled and skilled labor will now need to be mapped to the labor category. Technicians, clerks, service workers, officials, and the agricultural and unskilled factors will all be categorized as labor. As you'll notice, since there are no factors mapped to the old unskilled and skilled labor categories anymore, the related rows on the table at the bottom are now highlighted in red. Since they're no longer being used, we can right-click to remove these from the aggregation scheme. Now we can see from the current aggregation information that 8 old factors are now mapped to 4 new ones. There are a few important points to remember here. First, you can aggregate these factors into any number of groups you prefer. However, the GTAP model requires you have at least one factor named capital. Therefore, it's crucial to keep a capital category listed. Another important point to remember is that you cannot assign identical names to elements belonging to different sets. For instance, let's say you wanted to have 2 unskilled labor categories, one for agricultural labor and a second for other unskilled labor. If AGR already represents an element in the commodity set, you can't use the same name for both agricultural and other unskilled labor in the endowment set. Instead, you'll need to choose a different name for each category, also making sure that the new factor codes are not elements in other sets. Let's go ahead and click OK to exit this screen. Our next step is to save our aggregation scheme to File, which lets us save the aggregations we just modified. Click the Save Aggregation Scheme to File button and navigate up 3 levels to the root of the GTAPAgg directory, and then save our file, which we'll call myDataAgg.agg, into the AggStore directory. Note that GTAPAgg doesn't allow saving into source directories, which is why we saved our file in the AggStore directory. It's always good practice to check that you have the correct mapping file before clicking the Create Aggregated Database button. Based on the changes we made, GTAPAgg now shows that we have 11 regions, 11 sectors, and 4 factors in our new aggregation scheme. Once we confirm that we have the correct mapping details, we're ready to click the Create Aggregated Database button. In the dialog box, we need to specify where the resulting aggregated database will be saved. Let's save it in the AggStore directory, keeping the default file name, which provides a lot of information about the new database. It informs us that the database release is 11B, that the type is the standard GTAP database with a 2017 reference year, and finally, it tells us that it includes an 11 by 11 aggregation, which means 11 regions by 11 sectors. Let's click Save, and the aggregation process begins. Once the process completes, GTAPAgg will show you a list of all aggregated databases. Most of the output files are header array files with a .har extension. The GTAPAgg program creates the base data, default parameters, and sets files, which are the three main items that constitute the GTAP database. Base data.har is the standard GTAP database that contains the value flows. Default.prm provides the default parameter values for the GTAP version 7 model. Note that the parameters file has a PRM extension, but it's basically a har file. And the sets.har file contains all of the sets used in the version 7 model. GTAPAgg creates other files as well. Baserate.har contains the implied tax rates. Baseview.har provides a general summary of the data in a different format. The CMF start file contains additional instructions for run GTAP. CO2.har provides CO2 emissions data. GDX.zip translates the har outputs into GDX format for use in GAMS. GSD.ffbs.har includes nutritional accounts. GSD.fn CO2.har is for non-CO2 data. GSDF.volley.har is for energy volumes. GTAPSAM.har is for the database in SAM format. Metadata.har is for metadata. And the GTAP v6.zip file is the conversion of the GTAP v7 model nomenclature back to align with the GTAP version 6.2 model. All of the sets, value flows, and parameters are converted to the GTAP version 6.2 naming conventions. If you use the GTAP 9 or 10 database, the front data is consistent with the version 6.2 model, and the conversion zip file will be GTAP v7.zip, which converts all naming conventions forward to the new v7 model. GTAPAgg handles this conversion automatically, and users just need to make sure they're using the correct datazip archive with the consistent model. Let's go ahead and click OK to exit. Now that we've created our aggregated database, you'll notice that a new button has been added to our commands, called View Output Files, which can be used to access the aggregated databases that were generated. Let's click on View Output Files, and then select Sets.har from the submenu. This is a typical har file, in which the first column displays the header names that correspond to different sets in the GTAP v7 model, as well as the mapping. The other columns in the har file provide information about the type of the header, dimensions, and the name. Let's first view the new regional aggregation by double-clicking header reg in row 3. As expected, there are 11 regions, and you can see the new UK region here in row 8. Double-click to return to the contents page. Now let's take a look at the sectoral aggregation. In the GTAP version 7 model, we have a MIG matrix where activities and commodities are distinguished, allowing for the possibility of multi-output activities. The default assumption in the GTAP v7 model is a diagonal MIG matrix where each activity produces a single output. Therefore, the set of activities and the set of commodities are identical, and the sectoral aggregation we performed in GTAPAgg informs both the activity set and the commodity set. Now let's double-click the commodities header in row 4. Here, we have the 11 commodities with the coal oil gas commodity created on row 4. Double-click to return to the contents page, And let's now check the activity header by double-clicking on row 6, which we find is exactly the same as the commodity header. As expected, 11 activities with coal oil gas as the new, separate activity we previously added. In future GTAPAgg releases, you'll be able to distinguish between activity and commodity aggregation. Let's double-click one last time to return to the Contents page and have a look at the endowments set in row 7. Here, our set includes land, labor, capital, and natural resources. Let's go ahead and close the sets.har file. We can also view the basedata.har file via the View Output Files button and submenu. Here, we can see the value flows based on the new aggregation. The header names correspond to the GTAP v7 model naming conventions for value flows. Let's double-click on VDPB in row 8, which is domestic purchases by private households at basic prices. As you can see, the commodities are in rows and the regions are in columns. You can also filter commodities and regions by using the toggles in the upper right corner. Let's go ahead and close the HAR file to exit out of this. Let's now explore how to create a fully disaggregated database by clicking on the View Change Regional Aggregation button. On the window that opens, you'll see there's a button labeled 1-to-1. If you click this, GTAPAgg creates an entirely disaggregated database that maps each individual region in the database to its own region. In other words, we end up with 160 old regions mapped to 160 new ones. Similarly, you can do the same for sectors by clicking the View Change Sectoral Aggregation button from the GTAPAgg main screen and clicking the 1-to-1 button within. GTAPAgg doesn't, however, offer the ability to do 1-to-1 mapping for factors, but you can do this manually by inserting new rows into the table through View Change Factor Aggregation. Once you're done disaggregating, you'll need to save the aggregation scheme to File and create your new database following the same process we demonstrated earlier. There are a few more buttons in the View Edit Regional Aggregation window that are quite useful. The Help button directs you to the Help menu that we covered earlier in this video, where content related to data aggregation questions are conveniently organized by topic or accessible through a keyword search. There's also a Copy button that copies the specified aggregation to the clipboard, allowing you to paste it directly into Word or Excel. This feature is quite handy when including aggregation details in reports. Additionally, there's a Paste button available that allows users to paste copied aggregations from their clipboard instead of assigning mappings individually in the top panel, which can be a time-saving shortcut for many. To learn more, you can right-click on the Paste button to jump straight into that section of the Help menu for more details. Let's now click Cancel to exit out of this window and return to GTAPagg's main screen. Let's now turn our attention to an alternative method for creating an aggregation scheme, where we modify the aggregation text file that is read in by GTAPAgg. To do this, let's click the Read Aggregation Scheme from File button and make sure that we're in the correct directory. For this example, we need to be in the GTAP 11b, GTAP 2017 directory, and then we'll right-click on the default.agg file. Select Open With, and use Notepad. Notepad will open the aggregation file so that we can edit it directly. The default.agg file will indicate the same aggregation as the GTAPAgg program for the default GTAP 11 database, with reference year 2017. There are different sections in the file that we're going to explore. Section 1 lists the new aggregated sectors, with each line referring to a new sector. As you can see, there are 10 sectors in the default aggregation scheme under Section 1, and the right-hand side lists the descriptions for each. Section 2 lists the original disaggregated sectors and provides the mapping for all 65 sectors. For example, paddy rice is mapped to grains and crops, and coal is mapped to extraction. Section 3 lists the regions, and Section 4 specifies the regional aggregation, or mapping of how the 160 old regions are mapped to the 10 new regions. Section 5 lists the factors of production, and Section 6 specifies the factor mapping. Now that we've familiarized ourselves with the different sections of this document, let's edit the aggregation file. Let's say we want to create a new sector out of extraction called coal, oil, and gas, similarly to what we did before in GTAPAgg. To do this within the aggregation file, we need to go back up to Section 1, locate the extraction line, and copy and paste it immediately below. We'll change the name from extraction to coal, oil, gas, and change the description from mining and extraction to coal, oil, and gas mining. Since we're disaggregating these sectors from extraction, we also need to update extraction's description to other mining and extraction. Now we need to change the sector aggregation mapping in Section 2 by locating the coal, oil, and gas sectors and changing their aggregation mapping from extraction to our new coal, oil, gas sector. So let's locate the lines for coal, oil, and gas and change extraction to coal, oil, gas. Let's now scroll down to Section 3 so that we can define a new region called UK out from the existing West Europe region. We'll follow the same steps as above by copying and pasting the West Europe line immediately beneath it, changing the West Europe code on the new line to UK, and the description to United Kingdom. Then we need to edit Section 4 accordingly. But instead of scrolling through the long list of regions, let's just search for GBR to locate Great Britain. Once found, let's change the mapping from West Europe to UK so that it maps to our new region. Now we need to scroll down to Section 5 to edit the factor aggregation mapping. As with before, we'll create an aggregate labor factor. So let's highlight unskilled labor and change it to labor, and delete the skilled labor line. Now we need to map these in Section 6 by updating the now removed unskilled and skilled factors to the newly created labor. We'll do this for technicians, clerks, service workers, officials, and the agricultural and other unskilled workers. Now that we've made all our changes, let's save the file by going to File, Save As, backing up into the root of the GTAPAgg directory, and saving the file as my new agg.agg within the AggStore directory. Once saved, we can close the file and move on to reading it into GTAPAgg. To read our aggregation file into GTAPAgg, the Read Aggregation text file window should still be open from our previous steps. But if it isn't, you can open it by clicking the Read Aggregation Scheme from File button. We need to navigate up to the root of the GTAPAgg directory, into the AggStore folder. Select the My New Agg.agg file that we just created, and click Open. Now that GTAPAgg has loaded our aggregation file, let's inspect our changes to ensure that our new UK region is correctly mapped to the old Great Britain region. To do this, click the View Change Regional Aggregation button. In the top right table, scroll down to find GBR, which is region number 83. And in the New Region column, we should see that our newly created UK region is correctly mapped. Since it is, we can click Cancel to exit this window. Let's now check to ensure our sectoral aggregation changes are also mapped correctly. To do this, click the View Change Sectoral Aggregation Scheme button. In the top right table, scroll down to find the coal, oil, and gas sectors, which are sectors 15 through 17, and make sure that the new sector specified in the middle column for each is our new coal, oil, gas sector. These are all correct. So let's click Cancel to exit. Let's now check to ensure our factor aggregation changes are also mapped correctly. To do this, click the View Change Factor Aggregation Scheme button. In the top right table, let's locate the factors from row 2 to 6, and make sure they're all mapped to our new labor factor. They all are. So we can click Cancel to exit. So far, everything we've changed looks good and is not throwing any errors in GTAPAgg. But that may not always be the case. For learning purposes, let's create a mapping issue in our aggregation file for the gas sector. To do so, let's open our aggregation file back up in Notepad by clicking on Read Aggregation Scheme to File, making sure we are in the AggStore directory. Right-clicking on our myNewAgg.agg file, and selecting Open with and Notepad. Once open, let's scroll down to Section 2. Locate the gas sector. Delete the coal, oil, gas description, and save and close the file. When we read the file back into GTAPAgg, the software will warn us that there's a problem with the gas sector on line 75. Let's click OK. Let's now open our aggregation scheme again, but this time, we'll use TABmate to view the file. In the Genpack modeling system, TABmate is a program designed for modifying and debugging tab files, among others. To open the aggregation file in TABmate, in which we just created an error, click the Read Aggregation Scheme from File button. Right-click on our myNewAgg.agg file, and select Open with TABmate. If you recall from the warning we received in GTAPAgg about our error, it occurred on line 75. So let's scroll down to find that, which should coincide with the gas sector. As you can see, the coal, oil, gas sector mapping is still missing. To fix this, let's copy and paste a description from the line above into the blank. Click Save. Close TABmate. And read the file back into GTAPAgg by selecting myNewAgg.agg in the Read Aggregation Text Files window and clicking Open. As you can see, since we fixed the mapping issue, GTAPAgg did not give us a warning this time. since we know there are no issues with our regional and sectoral mappings. Let's click on Create Aggregated Database. Make sure we are in the AggStore directory. Select our existing zip file and click Save, and then Yes when prompted to overwrite the file. Once GTAPAgg has completed its run, click OK on the information window, and you'll see that the View Output Files button has reloaded, giving you access to the output data files from your aggregated database. Let's revisit the Choose Source Data section once more to review specific instructions crucial to keep in mind during your data aggregation process. Upon selecting your database and the specific product you're working with, GTAPAgg provides instructions within this text box. Scrolling down, you'll find several key points to consider. First, for the standard GTAP model regarding parameter mobility, it's important to note that the values entered for factor mobility in the factor aggregation window do not impact the output parameter file. Instead, adjustments for parameter values must be made in the default parameters file. Second, ensuring unique names for codes is essential as elements of different sets cannot share the same name. Third, certain reserved codes should be avoided, as they're already utilized in nutrition accounts. There may be additional notes for other models. For instance, in GTAP, specific commodities with designated names are required, and the gas sector should be an aggregate of sectors gas and GDT. As a final reminder, always be sure to check the notes in this text box when working on a new aggregation to ensure accuracy. That brings us to the end of this GTAPAgg demonstration, which I hope has provided you with some useful insights into working with this program. This closes our presentation and demonstration of the GTAPAgg software. Best of luck with your GTAP modeling. And please feel free to contact the Center for Global Trade Analysis if you have any questions.